Welcome to Buffy Boys, your once weekly bisexual, all singing, all dancing review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer with me, Joel, and you,
Brian.
And this week we are reviewing Some Assembly Required, which is episode 2, season 2, directed and written by...
It was written by Ty King and it was directed by Bruce Seth Green. So Bruce Seth Green directed a bunch of it. I think we talked about him before. Ty King, nothing about him online basically, except for the fact that he also wrote Passions.
Passions?
Which is Passion, sorry, just one Passion. Passions is a soap opera, I think, from the 90s. Anyway.
Is there any relation to Passion Fashion?
It is. So Passion was the episode later on in the season in which Jenny Calendar gets Jenny Calendared.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a big one. Well, I'm looking forward to that, but I'm also looking forward to talking about this, which, if I understand correctly, Brian, is one of the most lore-heavy and thematically important episodes of Buffy, I think.
So it's actually the episode of Buffy that has the highest rating on IMDb. Mm-hmm. And also there's a stage play of it. The
stage play of it, yeah, critically acclaimed. Mm-hmm. Royal Shakespeare Company, I think, wasn't it?
No, I'm getting myself mixed up. So this has actually had a modern dance interpretation made of it. So,
do you remember in America's Next Top Model when they did like modern dance interpretations of their emotions, and it was like happy, sad, and do you remember this? And people like
no.
Okay.
Which go on.
It was funny. Anyway, if you haven't remembered it, we'll make a good riff. But you didn't remember.
Okay, I don't. I'm sorry. And what I do remember though,
people wearing masks.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yes, thank you.
In cycle 6 or 5 or 4.
If you say so, yeah.
Yeah, the one with Joni and some other people. Yeah, that was great. And Jade, the most perfect, top model contestant of all time.
Off the top of your head, don't think about it too much. What's your favorite moment from America's Next Top Model?
Okay, I have many top moments.
First one comes to your mind.
Fuck, it has to be boxing joyfully.
Okay, explain that.
So it's going to be really difficult in an audio format, but basically they're given a bunch of random action words, verbs, and then a bunch of adverbs, and you have to pick 2 out of a hat, and you have to do them basically. So you might get skipping. Menacingly, so you'd have to do a skipping motion and do it menacingly. So this one girl got boxing happily, and she starts to do the box dance motion where you like put voguing basically. Yeah, where you make boxes in front of your face, and she did that.
And she looks delighted while she's doing it.
She truly was.
So I suppose I just want to say at the top of this episode, Brian, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I really appreciate your contribution so far. You are of course leaving us now that Sekiro, the video game, has come out, and as you have been warning me for several weeks now, you will no longer be engaging in any other activity than playing this PlayStation game.
Yeah, pretty much.
Tell us a little bit about it, because I haven't actually seen it yet, so I'm using this as a medium to vicariously learn.
This is the only time we're going to talk about it or talk. It's it's the new From Software game. They made Dark Souls, which is notoriously difficult, and Bloodborne, and also Demon Souls back in the day that has a really awkward apostrophe. It's essentially just a game about Sengoku era Japan. Where every time you die, things get more difficult, and it's really punishing, and you have to be really split second in your reactions to it. It's really good fun. I like them, those games. They're cool.
Do you find any parallels with Buffy?
No. No.
Buffy dies and comes back.
True, she does. Not as many times as I've died in those games, though, which is a lot.
Well, it is called Shadows Die Twice. I presume you've died no more than twice.
I actually have only died once, so I presume that second death will come closer to the end.
Or to the end, yeah. So I suppose what might be useful, because this is not a very memorable Buffy episode, although I did...
To finish now, just leave it there.
To just stop, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a micro podcast. They're all the rage. What was that thing where people were...
Microdosing.
No, microdosing was what I was going to say, but that thing where people were sleeping for 5 minutes at a time, what was that called again?
Yeah, I was trying to remember the name of that a while back, because we know somebody who tried to do it, and that guy is a crazy person, so...
So it was like basically that the entrepreneurial way to sleep was like 15 minutes every hour.
15-minute naps every like 2 hours, and you weren't allowed to sleep during the night.
I think there's literally an episode of Star Trek about how people will go crazy doing that if they can have their REM sleep.
Understandably, it's fucking insane.
Anyway, to this episode, Some Assembly Required. Not the most memorable episode of Buffy, so I think our summary of what happens in this episode would be very useful. Brian, take us away.
Okay, so here is the summary from my book. Bright Chris has raised his dead footballer brother, Darren, from the dead, and is trying to create a perfect mate for him.
Does it say Darren?
It does.
That's not right.
No. Cordelia is abducted to provide the head for this patchwork girl, and Buffy and Xander save her. Darren dies again trying to save his headless bride from the flames. Giles and Jenny go on a first date. Patchwork Girl is actually my favorite Nirvana song.
Do you know what this reminds me of? I think it's something you've unintentionally referenced a few times, is that, and you'll be better explaining it, but the Friends Twigger.
Friends, yeah.
Can you, just contextualize that for me.
No, I will sound so racist because
there's no race element.
There's no race element, but like it gets so quickly into a weird accent if you're trying to do it in any way.
So it's basically people doing it was a Twitter account
that recounted all the Friends episodes in tweet format, and this was when tweets were much shorter.
But it was like a pidgin, as in like, you know, a broken English, but not even like English, just like a real, like basically if you were either Charlie from Always Sunny in Philadelphia or Brian's D&D character trying to recount something, or just Brian just trying to recount something without notes. It was just this like broken, confused LSD haze of what actually happened in an episode of Friends. And that's what some of these summaries remind me of about Buffy. It's like it's such a barest association with what actually happened in the episode.
Yeah. There's lots of tweets about hamsters. Phoebe was never spelled right. It was always Pobe. And Rosh.
Pobe and Rosh. Rosh was the worst one.
Yeah, I hate Rosh.
God, we were very easy to amuse when we were in our early 20s, weren't we?
We were very drunk.
We were very drunk very often. So yeah, that's the gist of it. I had erroneously referred to this as them making robots last week, but there's no robocular parts involved. This is basically Buffy's take on either Weird Science, which is kind of the seminal 80s film with the guy from the kid who plays Brian in the Breakfast Club.
Oh, sure, yeah.
He builds a woman in a computer, and also Bride of Frankenstein. So there's quite a lot about kind of, you know, which we'll get into, kind of like nebulous, you know, chopping girls up and making them into the perfect woman. A lot about American football. Quite a lot of cute moments with Giles trying to court Jenny Calendar, who is graced with a first name in this episode, and that is it. A bit about Angel, which really rings like tone deaf for me, him like being jealous of Xander, and as the Buffy Wikipedia notes, wearing a tan jacket for the only time in his entire television career.
Yeah, it's very confusing, to be honest. I'm not sure why they're going with that. Yeah, it's a bad episode. I mean, like, it's not a bad episode, it's total fun, but like, it's not up to much. I read an article today, or a blog post, about why this episode actually is super relevant to the whole like thematic structure of the season, and I walked away thoroughly unconvinced, but I will, of course, regurgitate everything that person said. So
what does blog mean again? Isn't that meant to be an abbreviation for something?
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I
like
think
blag, blague, or like as in like French for like chatting.
It was like the way Bebo was meant to be. It supposedly was a
be everyone acronym? Be or be online or something.
Blog early, blog often.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah,
is it acronym or?
That's an acronym because you say it out loud.
Yeah.
And an initialism is when you don't say it out loud. So an initialism is CIA, and an acronym is NASA or laser.
What was the third one?
What?
There's like an acronym, an acronym, an initialism, and maybe it was an abbreviation. I know Alan Partridge had a good episode about it recently.
Sure.
So in terms of, I suppose, if there are some themes running through this episode, I think it's actually, this is quite a solid, like, this episode zones in quite a lot on gender, and specifically like sexism, in a way that other episodes haven't, as in the sense that you can extract from other episodes so far that there are these themes, but because of how basic the plot is, there is quite a bit you can kind of think about in terms of how these three boys, so Daryl, rather than Darren, Daryl, who was killed, a football star, killed tragically. His brother reanimates him in the school science lab. His weird friend Eric also helps him, and then they're kidnapping girls' bodies, chopping them up to make them into a mate, a bride of Daryl, so to speak. So there's a bit about how Daryl wants to covet this bride, about how they're making girls, just the whole kind of gross, you know, chopping girls up, putting them back together. There's a lot of serial killer vibes to it. But then you also have Giles trying to figure out how to date Jenny Calendar in the episode as well, and she ends up he can't figure out how to ask her out, so she kind of takes charge of the situation, and then there's a nice bit at the end where Angel is jealous of Xander, and him and Buffy have like a bit of a scene, and she's like, hey, I'll walk you home, and there's a bit of kind of reversal of gender roles there. So I think from like just a really kind of clean, traditional, unironic gender point of view and a sexism point of view, there's a few points that kind of the episode kind of touches on.
Yeah, I can see that. That wasn't my takeaway from it, but I can definitely see that. It's
So you're wrong then.
I am wrong, of course. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what there is to be said out there about that. Like, what's your takeaway from that? What do you think it's trying to say? Just like that there is an overall reversal?
No, I think it was. I don't think it's trying to say anything, to be honest. I think it was episode 2 of season 2. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in terms of what's there, I think even when Buffy does Monster of the Week episodes, there's a little bit of inversion there. I did. Okay, let me put it this way. I didn't feel all the women were being victimized in this episode. I didn't feel they were the victim.
Yeah.
I didn't feel the gaze of the story was about, oh, woe is me. And even when Cordelia is often the we've talked before about her being the dark mirror of Buffy, and it's like, well, it really is Buffy the dark mirror of Cordelia. But anyway, she's often the bait. She's often tied up. She often takes these traditional damsel in distress roles.
Even fumbling her keys in this episode, trying to get into her car, which is one
of the more horrifying
horror images. Yeah,
the dropping your car keys and seeing someone's shoes on the other hand, the other side of the car. But she never feels paper thing, or like she loses her agency. She feels like she's quite a lot of agency, and that's being overpowered by someone who is overpowering her. Do you know what I mean? Rather than her being weak. Whereas something that we see a lot in female characters in lesser fiction is what I think we might refer to once or twice before, fridging.
Yep.
And I'm going to wing this because I haven't looked this up. I'm pretty certain I know how to define this, but it's basically the trope of a loved one dies to further your character's emotional interestingness or complexity.
Often women.
So I suppose specifically the term fridging refers to, it was popularized by an incident in Green Lantern comic where the Green Lantern returns home to find that his girlfriend has been stuffed into a refrigerator dead. And it's a trope of women being maimed, victimized, depowered and otherwise as human beings undergoing kind of extreme trauma for the purpose of making a male hero's gritty story more gritty, and that's not something Buffy entertains. There's not a male for it to refer to, but also I feel that when female characters, even in the worst episodes of Buffy are put in difficult situations, it's more of acknowledgement of like, yeah, women do get put in difficult situations very often, but it's not because of, like, fridging tends to imply either their fault or their weakness, which I don't think Buffy does. And I think this episode is a reasonably good example of that. Like Cordelia, Buffy, Willow, they're all hunted, photographed, all this stuff by these serial killers essentially, or spree killers technically, but they're not treated as weaker or lesser because of that. That was my feeling about it anyway.
They're neither of those things. They don't kill anyone, but I get what you mean.
They have all the tropes and trappings of spree killers.
There's lots of instances of the male gaze in this episode. Lots of moments of seeing things from Eric's perspective and really actively, like, aggressively watching women. And it does have a gender split in terms of the camera work and the tendency in terms of its perspective, which is quite interesting. If you're talking about inversions, one inversion I thought was quite interesting in this episode was the kind of pre-echo that there is there about Angel being jealous of Xander. So Buffy dancing in front of Angel to make him jealous with Xander in the last episode is quite an Angelousy move, I thought. And
Angelus being basically Angel's dark vampire personality that comes out.
Indeed. So the way that she does that, playing with him, his jealousy and his like emotions like that.
What you say is Angelousy?
Uh-huh.
His Angelus.
Oh, Angelus. Yeah. Okay. I thought that was quite that. So I thought it was a little bit of inversion, and that obviously plays into it. There's quite a lot of inversion in this season in terms of the power exchange between Buffy and Angel, especially in that episode, I Only Have Eyes for You, I think it's called, which is the one where Angel turns into the woman, the Poltergeist episode where Angel turns into the woman and Buffy takes the role of the man, so they don't actually die. They're possessed by the ghost of alternate gender lovers, essentially. Yeah. So that was, I thought, kind of interesting. By the way, we were watching it and you asked if the Eric actor had been in anything before. Yeah. If you knew him. I don't think you do. I actually looked it up previously, and he's definitely a person. I actually thought that it was Daryl's actor who was this person, but having watched it, it's actually Eric. So he's Michael Bacall. He was in a bunch of Tarantino movies. So he's in the Inglourious Bastards. Yeah. He's one of the Jewish guys in the troupe, and also he co-wrote Scott Pilgrim and 21 and 22 Jump Street. Oh, weird. Yeah. All films which we're weirdly quite fond of, except for Inglourious Bastards. Yeah, true. I like Inglourious Bastards. I liked it, but like if you say Scott Pilgrim, 21, 22 Jump Street, I think Inglourious Bastards isn't our favourite. Awkward, no. 22 Jump Street would definitely be my least favourite there. I thought we enjoyed it. I think we have that on DVD, don't we? We have it on Blu-ray, yeah. You got it from me at some point. I'll always be slightly uncouth in that I still refer to Blu-rays as DVDs in my soul, yeah. Yeah, I know. So, other instances of women being made in this show? Yeah, they do exist. And so there's the Buffy bot. Yep. And generally anything to do with Warren Yeah, sure. So what was it? April was his girlfriend?
April, yeah. So the ostensible villain of season 6, or the leader of the trio, tends to make women. He is like, I'm actually kind of not really looking forward to it in some ways, because he's probably one of the real example of a misogynist on this show, and it has to be done. But he's such a piece of work.
Yeah,
I do not like him.
He's a great foil for Buffy, because he's nothing except for male aggression, basically. Absolutely nothing else.
Beta male aggression, very specifically. You know?
I have to agree.
And I think, like, we're getting slightly off topic here. Oh, whoa. But the bit that was censored from that Buffy episode where Warren gets flayed alive, I think, which I actually think, not tame, but like compared to some of the shit you've maybe watched in Hannibal, like, it's nothing now.
Hannibal is so odd. I don't understand how Hannibal got shown on TV.
Yeah. But I think the bit with Warren is the first scarring, like, seeing on TV. I remember, and I have a lot of them. I'm very #triggered by like weird gore and this kind of stuff, but it's the first one I remember being like, oh, okay, I can't watch this anymore. I think it might be one of the many times I had to stop watching Buffy because it overwhelmed me in various ways.
I never got that with Buffy. You got that as well with Silence of the Lambs, didn't you? Where with the angel scene.
Yes. It's not even the angel scene necessarily in terms of the actual gore. It was actually very, in some ways, kind of similar to what happens with Corgi in this episode. I don't like the bit in Silence of the Lambs when the guard is handcuffed to the bars and he's trying to figure out how to get the key in time and starts crying. And I don't know, there's something to be unpacked there between that and the feeling of, like, you know, nobody came to my birthday party, or there's something emotionally not great about it. But also, I do think I saw Silence of the Lambs kind of, you know, accidentally, either it was on TV or through the like crack of a door or something, when I was, you know, 8 or realistically probably 15.
Yeah, sure.
Because I similarly had traumatizing experiences watching The Mummy, the Brendan Fraser film, in summer camp at 2 p.m. when I was 15 years old.
You're 15 when you watched that?
I'm maybe I was 14 and a half, because it was...
That's a 12s movie, Joe.
It was definitely 15s, and I'll tell you why, because my point was, or the cut that we had was 15s in the Irish censorship board or whatever, because my point was, you know, I kind of, you know, I was the person who was like, we're not old enough to watching this, which now makes me feel like Kathy Bates in Misery standing up and saying, you're all dirty birds. That's not how the film ended. That's not how the last serial ended. You know? But that was me saying, this isn't appropriate. I was traumatized by Brendan Fraser's antics. When really the person who was traumatized in that situation, as we found out, was Brendan Fraser, who hasn't been doing great for a few years.
No, he hasn't. Poor guy. He seems to be on his way back, though. I think he was in a TV show recently.
Titans?
Was he in Titans?
Titan thing?
Yeah, sure. Well done, Brendan.
Yeah.
You know, lovely guy.
This is one tangent where I don't know where I started, so you're going to have to guide us back to the episode of Buffy.
Yeah, what I was going to say was, my thing that I remember being really distressed by when I was younger was one time my mother described... Actually, no, two things. One time my mother described the plot of Seven to me when I was maybe 8 or 9.
Hell.
Yeah, and just the plot of it. So, like, this man goes out and tries to punch people by doing the deadly sins on them. I think I might have told the story before in the podcast, but anyway, that really haunted me. I remember getting very scared of looking out windows afterwards. And the other thing was that one time she came back when I was maybe 5 years old from being in the cinema watching Dante's Peak, which is a movie about...
Is it Dante's Peak? Is that what it's called?
I think so.
Okay.
It's the Pierce Brosnan movie about volcanoes, where essentially what happens is that there's a scene where a grandmother has to get out of a boat that she's in with her her two grandkids, because the boat is melting because the lake is pouring. It has lava going into it, and they're boiling, and she has to kick... she has to, like, basically use her legs to kick, like, to get out
from stroke,
to repel them, and she dies because of the burns. And my mom told me this, and I remember being traumatized because I didn't want that to happen to my granny. So
yeah. Now, bear in mind, this was just described to you.
Yeah, no, it was. Okay, so come here. Frankenstein is a huge aspect of this.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine, being Americans and being the people who would refer to that kind of thing a lot, it must be the movies of Frankenstein rather than the Mary Shelley kind of Frankenstein.
Yeah, so I suppose the main cultural touchstone would be the kind of Hammer House of Horror films, really the precursor to, before we even had science fiction B movies in the 50s and the 30s, you had your classic horror, your werewolf, your mummy, your Frankenstein, and the most famous and probably most prolific portrayer of Frankenstein being Boris Karloff. And so that was 1931, around then, when the first Frankenstein film in that series came out, which was a smash success, rapidly followed by Bride of Frankenstein in, I think, 2 years later, and that's obviously where this trope comes from. And
well, also, I mean, the original Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus, the Mary Shelley novel, has, like, that in it. The Frankenstein's monster in the end of the book does try to create a mate
Oh yeah, no,
who ends
absolutely.
up not allowing it exist because
Yeah.
it would be too painful to bring another being into the world, etc. So
But I suppose more in terms of, as you say, this kind of American cultural zeitgeist portrayal of Frankenstein, I think people generally picture Boris Karloff, and most versions of Frankenstein you will have seen are various imitations of the Karloff portrayal, as it were. Which I think is important to say, get out of the way at the top. Frankenstein being obviously the name of the doctor who invented the monster, and Frankenstein's monster being the monster. But let's be honest about it, culturally speaking, colloquially speaking, people have come to understand the monster as Frankenstein, so to some degree that is what it's called now.
I was gonna say God, we're so good when we got to the end of this bit because we didn't correct and say that, like, you know, Frankenstein isn't the monster.
But
then you went there.
No, I'm subverting. I'm saying Frankenstein is the monster to some degree by virtue of the fact that people have said it for so long. It's you know, that's how language works. It starts becoming true. You know?
Yeah, sure. Some of the like stories around the Frankenstein novel are fucking mad. I wrote a little bit about it in college. Things like, did you know that her mother, Mary
Shelley
Wollstonecraft?
her mother.
Mary
Wollstonecraft, yeah.
Shelley's mother, Mary Wollstonecraft. She was a reasonably proto-feminist writer. And she also wrote... Sorry, her mother died because Mary Shelley was born, and a little bit of her placenta was left inside of her, and she basically rotted from the inside out. Essentially, I believe.
Checks out.
Huh?
Checks out.
Yeah, so that's kind of somewhat influential on the fact that Frankenstein was written while Mary Shelley was pregnant with her first child. Yeah. That's a bunch of Freudian clusterfuck.
Absolutely.
Also, your favorite fact about Frankenstein obviously being that it's often referred to as the first science fiction novel.
Yeah, fundamentally, there are things that predate Frankenstein which retroactively can be interpreted as science fiction, but as a critic or as a theorist, there's, you know, that's a little bit choppy. It's like, can you really refer to people in the 15th century as trans, for example, if that terminology and concept didn't exist? Can you refer to something that was written in 11th, you know, century as science fiction? It's so on and so forth. But people would generally, there'll be some critical consensus that Frankenstein was the first science fiction novel in how we would currently interpret the concept science fiction, and it was written by an 18-year-old woman, and it's fucking amazing. It's a really good book. It stands up.
It does. It's really good.
It's very
readable. It's all about reason and passion and
dark, and it's gothic. Yeah,
and beauty, and there's an extended sequence in the book where the monster just wanders around the countryside trying to find beautiful things to make him feel good again.
Yeah, and I suppose the thing which obviously this episode of Buffy overlooks, which a lot of portrayal of Frankenstein overlooks, is that the Frankenstein's monster is quite eloquent and quite intelligent and quite, you know, it's about that Frankenstein has the tragedy of it is he has created real emotion, real life, real feeling in a thing. And I think portrayals were like, oh, Frankenstein smash, etc. Like that misses the whole point. That's not the horror of it.
The monster is intelligent and well spoken and horrified at his own existence. So come here. If one of the things I read about this episode was that apparently Willow has a Plan 9 from Outer Space reference at one point.
Okay.
I didn't actually get it, to be honest. As in, it was whatever it was. I found the text of it to be reasonably bland. But Plan 9 from Outer Space being an Ed Wood's movie, who of course was very well connected to Boris Karloff.
He was. I think Boris Karloff was in Plan 9, wasn't he?
If he was in Plan 9, that would make sense. I think it was a later one that he was in, to be honest.
I think it potentially was Plan 9, but basically Ed Wood is a famously troubled...
famously the worst director of all time.
Yeah, a troubled individual, a poor director, but the films that he created, like Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is a B movie from the 50s, are famous by virtue of their cult status as because they're so complicated and odd, and they're artifacts of filmmaking rather than good films themselves.
They're like the original so bad it's good movies.
Yes, I believe that Boris Karloff was in Plan 9 for like a frame or two.
Yeah, sure.
And if I remember correctly, I think his face may have been covered for quite a bit of it because he's quite ill at the time. So it's all weird stuff like that. And actually, do you know when I first saw Plan 9 from Outer Space, which I have actually seen, is the PlayStation 2 game Destroy All Humans, which is like a weird riff on grey aliens from the 1950s. If you press the right combination of buttons, it would play Plan 9 from Outer Space in its entirety, but you couldn't pause it or rewind it. It was just a file that was embedded, so you had to sit and watch the thing.
That's deeply odd.
And that was where I watched it for the first time.
Okay, so what is the monster here? What does he represent? I kind of saw it as being just in the way that the mother is poring over those old videotapes of the son Daryl, who was a football star.
Yeah.
I think you're going to read him as being basically Buffy takes down the patriarchy one image at a time, and this one is the football player. But I kind of think that he represents, because there's another season episode later on in the show where, I think season 7, where Buffy and Dawn and a bunch of other people fall in love with a guy because he has a Leatherman jacket. And it's all about, like, his brother basically was a big football star back in the day, and essentially it's this kind of like trying to hold on to your youth and when you were a big star and stuff.
Yeah.
So I kind of saw it as being a bit of an attempt to, a really misfigured attempt to maintain youth and popularity, and the way that he was dismissive of Cordelia when she was younger, and that now tries to plead with her to be interested in him again. I just thought it was a real interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, it definitely does. You know, Cordelia often gets caught up in these plots of youth and reclaiming, like keeping youth and disfiguring beauty and all this kind of stuff. You know, it's not the first time someone has like strapped her down to a table while obsessing over her beauty in her head, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah,
in 14 episodes.
14 episodes. She also, like, you know, drops into conversation, kind of humble brag how she can drive at one point. It's like, we get it, Cordy, you figured out how to drive.
Yeah,
I get it, you know. Yeah, so I think that's definitely there. I again, my point about that I made to you while we were watching about how Buffy's basically beating up a high school jock, which is, you know, just another classic symbol of American patriarchy, American kind of masculinity. You know, I think that's a soft sell. I think it's there. I don't think it's a point of it, but I think that this as an episode focuses massively on American football in a weird way, and it's something that I think for you and I anyway, as Irish people, it's a weirdly arcane and inscrutable part of American culture.
I watched 5 seasons. I watched 5 seasons of Friday Night Lights, which is a stunning TV show. I can't wait to watch to start our new podcast, which is going to be called
Friday Night Fells.
That's not what I was going to say. Okay. I'm not allowed to say what I was going to say, so whatever.
What were you going to say?
I can't say it.
You can say it now.
Can I?
You're going to say Friday Night Faggots, aren't you?
Yeah.
I think we can say that.
Yeah, we can, but we shouldn't.
If you're listening,
yeah,
you know whether you can say it or not.
You do, and you probably can't.
Don't chance it.
But it's such a great TV show, and I watched 5 seasons of it, and I do not know how football works at all. It's all about football. Every single episode is about football.
I would easily believe they spent a portion of each episode just explaining, you know, in a PSA style, explaining the rules of football, and that you would still not remember it.
That's probably true. I did kind of understand rugby when you were playing it, though. So
rugby is not as hard to understand. Like, American football is quite arcane in some ways, and you know, it's hard to get behind a Brit, generally speaking. But I do often sympathise with Giles as, you know, a stranger in a strange land when he's like the Englishman in America, and his line about how it's bizarre that Americans, as a nation that's obsessed with virility, need to strap on 40 pounds of protective equipment just to play rugby.
He says 50 pounds, but okay.
He says 40. You can look it up in the script. That rang home for me. You know, it is very true. You know, whatever the distinctions you want to make, it's a big, like, American football is very spectacle orientated. In a weird way, and I think that's why it's a little impenetrable for us. And I think a lot of American sports are fairly festival process orientated. Yeah,
they're incredibly slow. Like, American football is the slowest sport in the world. Essentially, nothing happens. It's like 15 minutes per side, but it takes 8 hours or something like this. You know, you know, the 2 fastest sports in the world are hockey and hurling.
Hurling being obviously an Irish sport.
It is indeed.
Well, I probably actually understand less about. I don't really understand how hurling works. I've never really seen
hurling. Is incredibly simple. It's basically except that you use your hurl.
Men's Gaelic football. Yeah,
where you use your hurl, which is a big long stick with a big flat part in the end, to hit a schlitter across the field. And a schlitter is it's kind of like a baseball but way heavier, and if you get it into your face, you're fucked. One time I got, like 3 days before my communion, Kieran, my brother, hit a schlitter and it hit me straight in the face. I had a big bruise on my face for my communion.
Is that like your one sports injury you ever had?
I'd play loads of sports when I was younger.
Is it the first injury you ever had? I imagine you're quite dexterous when you play sports.
Ish. I do damage myself a good bit, but like I just don't stop because I have problems.
And yet you never played rugby.
You would have
been good at rugby.
I'm not sure if I would have been good at rugby, but also rugby isn't a thing that you play when you're from fucking Malahide, like.
No, I actually meant like in the last couple of years you haven't played rugby.
Oh, why would I ever want to do that? Jesus Christ.
So what was your favourite joke in the episode?
Oh.
My favourite joke.
Okay, go on.
Was when Giles, you know, for one thing, it's kind of like, you know, a nod because he calls Miss Calendar, which is all they've called her so far. And she says, "Oh, please call me Jenny. Miss Calendar is my father." I just liked it a lot. But I also, finally gave her a name as well. A close second was Giles telling Jenny, I presume you spend your evening throwing bones and downloading incantations.
That was pretty good. Fuck, it was £40. Fuck you.
Oh, I knew it was £40. You constantly, it's a very David and Goliath situation. You constantly challenge me on the minutiae of genre TV shows. You must know you're going to be wrong. And yet you do
but
it.
I don't care.
It's inspiring.
I don't care.
Every time you get knocked down, Brian, you get back up again. Even though I'm just going to knock you down again with my incredible knowledge.
So my favorite joke was where Cordelia was saying what her science
science fair project
was going to be, and it was going to be tomato, fruit or vegetable, and then about 4 minutes later, she comes into the library to ask Willow for help with her science project, and she says, Willow, will you help me? And Willow says, yeah, sure, fruit.
It's very good.
That was my favorite joke.
Actually, from a science point of view, this episode is interesting because it is ostensibly it's a purely scientific episode. There's no magic in it.
No.
Now, the one thing I will say is, it might be what you're going to say, is obviously the Hellmate facilitates this.
Yes.
There's a constant soft reality warping that happens around the Hellmate.
Yeah.
And it's something that Joss Whedon actually commented on because people have criticised him saying, and this may be a hand wave on his part, but they've said, how is it possible that, Sunnydale High has so many, genius level intellects, so many Reed Richards, resurrecting people and, creating magic puppets out of cyber demons, all this kind of stuff. And he's just like, you're thinking about it too hard. The Hellmate allows evil things to happen, so that's why they can do it, But ostensibly, there's no magic involved. He just really knows physiology, and he resurrects the dead.
He sure does. When they find out they're going through all the smartest guys or smartest peoples in the school's lockers.
Yeah.
There's a great scene where you can see a Descendants poster, and the Descendants are this really great punk band from the 80s, and they're kind of like proto-pop punk. They're kind of homophobic, to be honest, the lyrics were.
In a cool way, though.
No. They have a really good album called Milo Goes to College, though, and it's just excellent. It's I remember I found out about them because Robert Christgau wrote about Green Day maybe it was about Blink-182, that basically one of their albums was the albums that God put the Descendants on the earth to inspire. But the Descendants sticker quickly turns into a Black Flag sticker, and they're great too, so that was great for me.
Yeah, there's some obviously reasonably decent musical taste in Buffy's production, because I think they do thread and all that stuff through it.
Yeah, I think that actually happens quite often in the set dressing people for TV shows generally for the 90s included good band posters and stuff. You'd kind of see things like Sunnydale Real Estate turning up in the background of things.
Sunnydale Real Estate?
Sunnyday Real Estate.
Okay, sorry. I wasn't being funny. That's what
I think I misspoke there, to be honest. Sunnyday Real Estate, which are the best 90s emo band, basically. Mm-hmm. Actually, speaking of Robert Christgau, who is a great music critic, they make a reference in this episode to Gene and Roger, who are Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, who are both now dead, but they are the 20th century's by far the most influential film critics. They had a TV show called Siskel and Ebert, where they would discuss movies, and they were really influential in terms of introducing indie movies and spotlighting great movies in the century. So yeah, it was cool. We talked about him last episode.
Yeah, we did.
Roger Ebert, because he lost his jaw and he was kind of scary looking afterwards.
He did, but he kept a very positive perspective on life.
He sure did.
So what did you make of this episode in terms of the, it's not our forte, but the romantic aspects? Because there is definitely a theme here of, gross zombie romance aside. There's a parallel of Giles starting this relationship with Jenny and Buffy deepening and progressing this relationship with Angel, whom, I should note, is wearing a weird tan jacket.
You already said that at the start of the episode.
Which I said at the start of the episode, and I was still thinking about it.
Yeah, it was awful.
Good. It actually specifically reminds me of when later in the Angel TV series, it's quite funny actually, but he dresses how he thinks humans dress now, and he does an American accent, and so he wears a tan jacket and a Hawaiian shirt. He's like, "Hi, my name is Fred Angel. Ooh. Welcome to Los Angeles." And it's very good. It's David Boreanaz, because David Boreanaz is actually a lot funnier than Angel. Buffy allows him to be. He's funny on Angel, and it's him trying to do his comedic chops. But yeah.
We watched a video this week of David Boreanaz coming out and into some show where he's doing an interview for it, walking out into the crowd and flossing.
aka the Fortnite dance.
The Fortnite dance, and then being like, oh, hey guys, how's it going? Then flossing again, and stopping and starting flossing about 9 times.
Just aggressive
flossing. Yeah, my dentist warned me against that.
See, the joke here is you do not go to a dentist.
Nope.
So about the romance, what do you think about this? Because okay, let's lay our cards on the table. Let's set up the dominoes. The end of this season is that the head of the Giles and Jenny romance and the head of the Buffy and Angel romance is that Angel loses his soul, becomes Angelus, which is his dark vampire version of himself, and kills Jenny Calendar. And that's the tragic Buffy moment essentially. So they're obviously starting to lay some of the groundwork here, where and to be fair, Giles and Jenny have a genuine chemistry with each
totally
other.
Agree.
100% actually there.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So couples are definitely a huge part of this episode. So there's just the fact that the whole central thing is that they don't want Daryl to be alone. Mm-hmm. They want to give him someone to keep him company, is like obviously reflective of the whole thing. So in terms of couples, the speech that Xander had at the end was quite interesting and quite funny, where he was saying vampires are coupling off, monsters are coupling off. Do you ever feel like it's just going to be, at some point it's going to be a round of musical chairs and you're just going to have to pair up with someone else essentially. And Willow's like, yeah, because she's super in love with him. And that speech was actually pretty interesting. The idea that, everyone needs a mate, everyone needs a couple, to be part of a thing.
Yeah.
Because it's something that kind of, you feel the pressure for Buffy's character through the show. She kind of feels like when she's not in a relationship, she feels weird. Yeah. And she feels undefined. And that's why she ends up with Riley for so long, is that like she kind of just should be in a relationship, even though he does nothing for her.
Captain Normcore, yeah.
Captain Normcore for fucking sure. And then Cordelia tries to flirt with Xander briefly by thanking him for riding her out of the flames on yes, which we'll come back in a second. But
we do need to explain that. But yeah,
she tries to like flirt with him, and he's like, "Sorry, can't you see we're talking here?" And then he's like, "I don't think we'll ever find a way to go out with people."
Why? Because no one like me. Why? Because and I think that's probably a little bit of a foreshadowing about the fact that she does actually have feelings for him later in the season. Yeah. But yeah, so basically, when Cordelia is strapped to a gurney in the middle of a flaming, so the old science building, which apparently is the last building. I don't know where they gleaned this particular fact from.
Yeah, no, this particular fact came from the Wikipedia page. Yeah. I also read it, and I was like, that's an interesting fact, but I don't know where it came from. But
so the last building of the old school, most of which was torn down in the earthquake of 1937, which is the one that trapped the Master in the Hell Maze, essentially. So this building is on fire. Cordelia is strapped to a gurney. There's gasoline everywhere. Accelerants going crazy. Xander goes to help her, and he's like, I know how we'll escape. And he gets her up to speed like a toboggan and jumps on top of her and basically sails out of the building, literally riding her out of the building.
It was great.
And afterwards she's maybe it's just her damage where she's like, it's so amazing how you used me as transport. And then he
ran into the flames to save her.
He did. Maybe it was his favorite gurney, who knows.
Yeah, you never know.
So that was interesting in terms of kind of the kind of seeds of their relationship. And the stuff with Angel and Buffy was pretty good as well. I think they do a decent job. They do a remarkable job of making it not come off creepy that a 241-year-old is so obsessed with a 16-year-old girl. But his Angel's like ironic jealousy of Xander and like protectiveness rings false for me. It just
totally
doesn't,
agree.
because you also know that Angel is just so much cooler than that Xander. They try to portray Xander, and I think particularly an episode in this season, I think it's this season, that is very much a culprit for that, is the episode where he's on the swim team and they're trying to make him look sexy and successful and all these kind of things. But they occasionally try to portray Xander as a cool guy who is in nerd's clothing as opposed to like an absolute dweeb.
Yeah, no, it's a weird one. There is a bit of tension there. He kind of flits between, actually desirable and full-on fucking nerd. I actually read an interesting theory about this episode by Mark Fields, who I crib from constantly. I'm going to have to stop saying that. But
it's going to become your mantra, Mark Fields, who I crib from constantly.
Yeah, exactly. So he was writing about this episode, and one of the things he said about it is that Chris and Daryl represent the ego and the id.
Okay, sell me on it. So
essentially, if you look at it, there's a couple of quotes there. Daryl says to Chris, "You're always the brain," and Chris goes on about how Daryl protected him. Yeah. So that'd be very traditional ego id functions in a Freudian context. So the ego being the mechanically thinking part of your brain, and the
higher brain, really.
the higher brain for sure, and the id being the subconscious desires and violence or vulnerability that exists in a person. And if you look at it, Daryl's being hidden in a basement out of sight because he's like the unseemly, ugly part of what you don't express.
And the basement of the mind often being a metaphor for the id as well.
Absolutely. And the issue here is that there's no superego. Essentially, this guy has theorized that the mother having checked out is the superego having relinquished its duties. So the superego in Freudian theory is a thing, the conscience and the meta commentary that one might have, the self-awareness of one's own actions and curtailing of one's own actions and judging of one's own actions would be the superego. And he suggests that this is a foreshadowing of the themes of the season, which is like essentially the danger of allowing yourself to experience the impulses of the id. So if you look at Buffy, once she allows herself to feel sexual and to feel fulfilled sexually by Angel in innocence / surprise, I think surprise is the one, anyway, whatever, one of them, obviously that destroys her life. So complex relations between ego id issues, maybe we'll see that come up. I think that that's total bullshit for this episode, to be honest. I think that's stretching it so fucking far, and I think that this interplay between the two characters, if you're writing this story, that doesn't have to be inherent in what you're writing. Because there's no other way to write this where a younger brother who wants to pay back his older brother for taking care of him, that's always going to be an ego id kind of situation. One of them's always going to be the
baked into the characterization.
Exactly. So it's not that's over analyzing.
Yeah, but over analyzation is so much fun sometimes. I remember I had a lecturer who once had a fairly successful run at making it's like a paper or a book, but the theory is basically that Jane Austen's Emma. It's Jane Austen from Emma, right?
Yeah.
Was a lesbian.
Okay, that's not true.
It was not true, but he said this. He's like, no, it's not true, but you can prove it using the text, and that's kind of pretty much what a lot of this analysis is. Because for something to be true, you have to argue over whether it's authorial intent that we're talking about, and if we're not taking that as the word of God, TM, then whatever you can make happen in the text is true, and that's what veering back towards, I suppose, some seriousness about this. That's often what querying a text involves, because if you read queer themes into text, often, and particularly ones where the author didn't intend or was actively against that itself is an act of resistance, an act of literary creating something from the tools that's been given to you. So the argument is often made that even the dark side of that, or the negative side, is queer baiting.
I was going to say,
where you hint at things, a good
supernatural,
Sherlock, particularly anything where it's teasing something, but the
homoerotic notes,
but which will never become more than superficial. But the opposite side of that, the redemptive side, is when queer fans look at something and say, no, this definitely wasn't intended, but by God are we going to make it happen, and that querying itself brings out sometimes a better, richer, fuller text from the bones that are there. So kind of like making shit up using literary theory is can be quite a subversive act.
Taking ownership over a text is good, but I always find it a bit, from my personal approach to a text, it's never, I don't like extended universes, I don't like fan fiction, I can't read any of those things because it doesn't click with me even remotely. So querying a text, it feels incomplete from my brain in reading, and my emotional reaction to it is just, it feels incomplete.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a very odd relationship with expanded universes where I have an instinctual reaction to it. I'll read something and I'll say, oh, that happened, or I'll say it didn't happen. And there's quite a lot of expanding universe fiction, even canon stuff for various fandoms I like, or official stuff where I say, yeah, but that's not true. And then sometimes I look at something and I'll say, no, this is true, I feel this happened, and it's hard to quantify. But it's a weird one. We'll talk more about expanding universes because it's a concept I'm very interested in. Buffy doesn't have a great one. Weirdly, although there is a canon yearbook apparently.
I read this, yeah.
And in that, apparently, on my research noted that the two characters, Chris and Eric, are mentioning it as having had therapy and doing quite well these days. Which is the only other time they appear. Okay, Brian, I think this would be a salient dovetail into wrapping up the episode.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you have any Buffy bits you want to mention? Otherwise,
yeah, just a couple of things. I think what we see here is just a continuation of some of the ongoing themes in Buffy. A good one being how oftentimes the monsters in Buffy aren't unproblematized supernatural creatures. Specifically Buffy, someone says to Buffy, it's like, well, don't be too hard on Chris, he's not a vampire. She says, yeah, but he is a ghoul.
Yeah.
And again, this is this thing about, maybe this is something maybe I'm realizing about Buffy, that it's not actually, it's much more about using vampires as a way to get to human darkness.
Yeah.
Maybe more than I realized. So that's something I want to keep an eye on. And I also liked Buffy saying anyone who cooks up girls doesn't deserve a moment's, shadow of the doubt. Do you know what I mean? And I was very unapologetic about this, but all of this is completely gross. Which is like, they never miss a moment to be like, no, fuck that noise. Yeah. And my other big takeaway, my other kind of memorable moment, it was just how adorable Giles was trying to figure out how he talked to girls. And when he finally has a conversation with Jenny and she asks him out on a date, he turns to himself and says, oh, well, that went rather well. And he turns and he has a literal spring in his step. He pops.
He does.
And vogues away, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
It's very good.
Okay. Do you have any other fashion notes you want to say? I have one, which is that Eric at one point is wearing a bright pink Hawaiian t-shirt. Hawaiian shirt. Yeah, absolutely. With a yellow t-shirt underneath the Hawaiian shirt.
It's not good.
It's disgusting.
There's a lot of honorable mention to Daryl as Zombie Daryl, and he just wears his high school football jersey all the time, which is like a thing I think maybe a lot of people do after high school in America, which isn't cute. There's a lot of Willow wearing hats that are the kind of hats you wear where you've had a bad haircut and you're trying to hide it.
Giles wears a really cute tartan scarf though to the football game, which is really nice. I like that.
He does. He has great scarf game.
I want a scarf.
He's great scarf game.
Yeah. They're always nicely short. You always feel like they'd wrap it around your neck once and that's all. Yeah. That's okay, maybe.
And then just because it'll never happen again, I just mention one more time, bad fashion moment for Angel, awful tan jacket.
Yeah, worst fashion
Not
moment.
His colour.
No. He's also wearing a really bad shirt underneath it. It's kind of pleated.
I thought he was trying to... Well, actually, my instinctual thought was he's trying to dress straight. And then I was like, no, you need to rephrase what you're thinking here. I was like, I was trying to dress like Xander or a human. Just be like, hey, you like these human boys? But I don't think it's inexplicable. But no, like fashion-wise, it was just a lot of bag Hawaiian shirts, bag high school football jerseys, all that kind of jazz.
Okay, and death count. Do we count any of the deaths here? Do we count Daryl?
Yeah, because I think so. I think there is...
Daryl died before this.
Daryl did die before it. I think it's deaths that are showcased in the episodes. There's the 3 girls who die in the car crash from which they harvest the buggies initially to make most of his zombie bride. And Stefan Koicek, who is the vampire that she dusks in the opening scene when she's waiting for Angel, where she's like, Angel, I didn't come here to fight. Oh wait, I did. Which is cute. That's it. It's a pretty Wednesday night death count. Do you know what I mean?
Tuesday night, Joe.
Tuesday night. One thing this episode Buffy and these earlier episodes do in terms of death counts as well is very much portray a vampire is rising, a single vampire, what an unusual occasion, as if it's, this is like the Many Ninjas problem, because as Buffy goes on, it's like, 10,000 vampires have risen this week. It must just be a regular, week at the Slayer mill.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, are you ready for our ratings?
I've never been more ready, Brian.
Okay, I'm ready too.
Okay.
Do you want to hear mine?
I do.
Okay, do you have it written down?
I do.
I'm giving it 6.0 Grey's Anatomies out of 10.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, so obviously that's one of the books that he finds in the that he has in his locker to cut up the people. 6.0, I'll explain my reasoning there for a little bit. So I thought it was lacking in good Buffy-ness. So the character of Buffy, she wasn't that present in this episode. You didn't get much of her greatness. But I thought it was a good Monster of the Week episode. Absolutely grand. It showcases the fact that season 2 is such a step up. There are no awkward, badly written scenes. There's no tone issues. There's no question that this is an established show that is enjoying itself thoroughly. Yeah. A bad episode of Buffy between seasons 1 and 5, a bad episode of Buffy is still a great episode of Buffy.
That's a good point.
So 6.0.
Yeah. 6.0 Grey's Anatomies. Grey's Anatomy?
It belongs to Grey's. To Grey. Yeah. So it's his anatomies, yeah.
When I was in school, when we were leaving school, the school captain was going on to do medicine, and so the school bought him a copy of Grey's Anatomy, the textbook, and someone nudged me in the audience when he was presented with this, being like, it's really sad of them, isn't it, to get him the whole box set? Which is a fond memory of mine. I would go 5.0 tan jackets.
Really?
I thought it was poor. I was bored.
I thought it went quickly.
It went fine, but it fell into me, like, the death knell for me is it's not so bad that it's enjoyable. It was just, it was what it was. It was one of the closer episodes of Buffy so far that could have been lifting into a different supernatural show, and by that virtue, it hits very much middle of the road. But then depending, what B&B you visit and what episode 4 on the bed you're on, 5 out of 10 might be a good score. So I think it was very much it was the kind of thing that when I do a survey and there's an option for it, neither agree nor disagree, I aggressively click that for some options, and that's what I did here.
Fair. Okay, good enough. Okay, the next episode is
School Herd, which is the episode that introduces Spike, aka William the Bloody, aka one of the longest running characters in Buffy and Angel, and who I'm quite fond of.
I'm not a big Spike fan.
I'm a big Spike fan. He's just not cool in some ways,
Those are my favorite parts of him, but I feel like the people who love Spike love his grimdark elements of him,
What I like about Spike, particularly early on, is that Angel, and obviously the Master, but definitely Angel, represent an old world version of the vampire, and very much an Anne Rice kind of romantic kind of thing. And Spike is a vampire that, although he is quite old, but he's a vampire that was born in the 1980s. Emotionally, and that's just a cool thing, and it's a subversive thing. But yeah, School Hard next week. Looking forward to it. Happy to be here.
It's gonna be loads of Joyce moments.
There's going to be some choice moments. Choices. It's like Marie Kondo says, Hogan episode.
Does it bring you joy?
Does it bring you Joyce? It's what I was going for.
No.
And if not, throw it away.
Fair enough. Okay. I don't know. What do you
take us home, Brian?
Follow us on a social media thing this week. Yeah, actually, here's your call to the action. Try finding us on one social media thing and clicking like or follow or subscribe or something, and then tell 100 people to also do that.
And they tell 2 friends, and they tell 3 friends.
Yeah. Tweet us, maybe send us a tweet. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Send us a tweet this week and say, hey, that was fun and I enjoyed it, and then I will take it and I'll send it to Brian. It's like, oh my god, Brian, look at this, and we'll have like a nice day.
We're going to frame it. Any tweets we get, here's the thing, any tweets we get this week, we will print out and we will kiss.
That's a promise. I will take a picture of that for the Instagram if you tweet us this week.
I feel like I've done really bad in this episode. I feel like I've been really lacking in energy, and we've gone so long for such a crap episode.
I've been really sick.
Yeah, you have been.
And I think I've soldiered on. So I say well done, Brian, and well done, Joel.
Yeah. Okay. Buffy Boys. Oh, we should watch Roxanne, which is the Cyrano de Bergerac movie.
Cyrano de Bergerac?
Yeah.
Okay,
with
good.
Steve Martin.
Good plan. Let's watch that.
Okay,
Buffy Boys. Bye.